Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I decided to share this story about how I got my revenge on someone who tried to scam me out of my hard-earned money. This happened back in 2010 when everyone was using Facebook as their main social media platform. I was working as a content writer, but was between jobs at the time. I had just left my previous company due to budget cuts and was actively looking for new opportunities while doing some freelance work to make ends meet. That's when my former co-worker contacted me about a project. He said he was making a corporate film and needed someone to write the script. Since I was free and could use the money, I immediately accepted the offer. Guess I should have known better than to only have a verbal agreement about the payment. After I submitted my first draft, he came back with countless criticisms about why he didn't like it. He claimed the tone wasn't right, the flow was off, and the message wasn't clear enough. So I wrote a second draft, then a third one. He kept rejecting everything I wrote, but something strange was happening. Somehow the text was already being translated into our native language and was being used in the actual production. A friend in the industry had spotted my words in some footage being edited. When I realized what was going on, I told him that I wouldn't do any more revisions until he paid me the full amount we had agreed on. He completely stopped responding after that. That's when it hit me. I had been scammed. His film was already finished, using my work. I sent him a lengthy message expressing my disappointment, telling him how I had trusted him as a former colleague and how unprofessional and unethical it was to take advantage of me by using my work while pretending to reject it. I guess he felt a little guilty because he sent me 30% of what we had agreed on, claiming that this was what my work was actually worth. He even had the audacity to suggest that I should be grateful for getting paid anything at all, given how subpar my work was. A few months later, I landed a job at a major corporation. It was a good position in the marketing department, and while my position had nothing to do with it, I knew the company regularly hired production houses to create documentaries about their charity work. The company was well known in our industry for these projects, and getting one of these contracts could mean significant money and prestige. That's when I came up with my plan. I made a Facebook post about my new job mentioning how excited I was to be part of such a prestigious company's documentary projects. Here's the clever part. I had about 50 friends at the time, and I manually hid the post from everyone except him. Just as I expected, he took the bait. He messaged me congratulating me on the new job and asked if I could tell him how to apply for the documentary projects. His message was overly friendly, as if our previous conflict had never happened. I replied by calling him out on his nerve to ask for my help after what he did, telling him that he had shown zero integrity in our last project, and that I would never work with someone like him. I reminded him of how he had tried to cheat me, and how unprofessional his behavior had been. Almost immediately, he transferred the remaining 70% of my payment, so I decided to string him along a bit more. The truth was, the company did hire production houses annually, but only in April, and we were in December. I sent him a lengthy application form and told him that the process was quite long and complicated, and that he shouldn't expect to hear back before April. I made him fill out multiple pages of detailed information about his company, previous work, and proposed budget. I never submitted his form. When April came around, he called me asking about news regarding his application. I could hear the anticipation in his voice. I simply told him that we had received several applications, and unfortunately, his wasn't selected. He tried to press for more details, but I kept my responses vague and professional. I know it might seem a bit petty, but I felt satisfied knowing I got my full payment and wasted his time like he had wasted mine. He couldn't even complain about it because he knew he had tried to scam me first. I heard he had spent considerable time preparing for this opportunity, even lining up potential crew members. I've been working as a store manager at a popular retail chain for about 5 years now. The pay is decent, the staff is great, and most customers are pretty nice. I actually worked my way up from being a cashier took night classes in business management while working full-time, and eventually got promoted. It wasn't easy, but I'm proud of where I am now. Last Tuesday started like any other day. We were having our usual midweek sale, nothing special, just some standard discounts on seasonal items. That's when she walked in. A middle-aged woman with that signature "let me speak to your manager" haircut. She was already huffing and puffing before she even reached the aisles, checking price tags and shaking her head dramatically. I was helping out at the registers when I heard her voice from 3 aisles away. She was yelling about the prices being ridiculous and claiming she had coupons that would fix this. My cashier tried to explain that we couldn't accept coupons from our competitor's store, but the woman insisted that a coupon was a coupon. That's when I stepped in to help, already sensing this wasn't going to end well. When I approached, she demanded to know if I was the manager, expressing relief at finally finding one. She then complained about my employee refusing to honor what she called perfectly good coupons, waving them in my face like they were winning lottery tickets. I looked at the coupons she was waving around. Not only were they from a different store, but they had expired 2 months ago. I apologized and explained that we couldn't accept them due to being expired and from a different retailer. She became even more agitated, telling me she had driven 40 minutes to get here because we had the item she wanted, and demanded we honor the coupons. Her face was getting redder by the second. I tried to explain further, but before I could finish, she did something unexpected. Without warning, she just laid down flat on her back, right in front of the checkout lane. Other customers started gathering around, some confused, others annoyed, and a few even pulled out their phones to record the spectacle. She announced she wouldn't move until we gave her what she wanted, claiming this was discrimination. I asked her to get up, pointing out that she was blocking other customers. She replied that this was good, hoping it would make us listen to her. She even crossed her arms over her chest like a child having a tantrum. I signaled to my assistant manager to call the police. We had about 8 customers waiting to check out, and this woman was just lying there, acting like she was at a protest or something. Some customers were starting to leave their carts and walk out, which was exactly what we didn't need during a sale day. That's when this older gentleman with a service dog stepped forward. He looked like he was in his 60s, wearing a veteran's cap and leaning slightly on a cane. He politely told the woman he needed to check out because he had frozen items. She rudely responded that it was too bad and declared nobody would check out until she got her discounts. The elderly customer looked at his dog, then back at Karen, and smirked. He said just one word: release. I didn't understand what he meant at first, but his dog sure did. The dog walked right up to Karen, lifted his leg, and, well, you can guess what happened next. She jumped up like she'd been electrocuted, screaming about the dog peeing on her and threatening to call the police and sue everyone. Her fancy outfit was definitely not fancy anymore. The elderly customer explained that his service dog was simply helping to clear an obstruction, stating the dog was trained to assist in various situations. The slight twinkle in his eye told a different story. She ran to the bathroom, still screaming threats about lawsuits and arrests, leaving a trail of wet footprints behind her. By the time she came out, 2 police officers were waiting. They'd already reviewed our security footage and spoken to several witnesses. The officers told her about the complaints they'd received regarding her disrupting business and blocking access to services. She demanded the man with the dog be arrested, but they explained that, from what they could see, she was deliberately obstructing business and refusing to leave private property when asked. They told her they would have to escort her out. She protested, claiming she knew her rights, but the officers let her out anyway. I could see them trying not to laugh. One of them had to turn his head away completely. The elderly customer with the dog was still at the register, paying for his groceries as if nothing unusual had happened. I told him that he and his dog were welcome here anytime, to which he humbly responded that they were just doing their civic duty. He gave his dog a pat on the head as he said this, and I swear the dog looked proud. We ended up banning Karen from the store, and the elderly customer with his service dog became regulars. Every time they come in, my staff gives the dog an extra treat. I'd say he earned it. I started working as a maintenance person at Pine Valley High School back in 1982. I was pretty young, just turned 20, and definitely looked more like a student than staff with my long hair and casual style. But I was good at my job, especially when it came to welding and metal repairs. The shop teacher was a great guy who gave me permission to use the welding equipment whenever I needed to fix things around the school. One Monday morning, I got a call about some broken chairs in the shop classroom that needed welding. I grabbed my tools and headed over there during first period. Now, I knew the regular shop teacher was out sick, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I walked into the classroom, tools in hand, and immediately this substitute teacher started glaring at me like I just committed a crime. She immediately started berating me about being 15 minutes late to class. When I tried to explain that there had been a misunderstanding and that I was actually the maintenance person, she cut me off and said she didn't want to hear my excuses, declaring that my behavior was completely unacceptable. I attempted to explain again, but she interrupted once more, telling me that she'd been teaching for 20 years and knew how to handle tardy students who thought they could wander into her classroom whenever they pleased. I tried showing her my maintenance badge, but she just waved her hand dismissively, scoffing that it could be anything and asking if I thought I was a first student to try pulling something like this. Before I could say anything else, she walked over to the intercom and pressed the button. She called the office and told them she was sending down a student for tardiness and insubordination, adding that I was trying to claim I worked there. The office secretary simply replied that I should be sent down. I decided to just go along with it and told her that fine, I'd go to the office. When I arrived at the main office, the secretary looked up at me, clearly trying not to laugh. I introduced myself as the tardy student Mrs. Karen had just called about. The secretary couldn't contain her laughter anymore. She asked through her giggles if Mrs. Karen really thought I was a student. I joked back that apparently my maintenance badge wasn't convincing enough. Just then, the principal walked out of his office to see what all the laughter was about. I explained the situation, and he shook his head with a smile, telling me he would handle it. He called Mrs. Karen's classroom and politely asked her to come down to the office to discuss the student she had just sent down. About 5 minutes later, Mrs. Karen came storming into the office, clearly ready to continue her tirade. She immediately started saying how glad she was that they called because I needed to learn a lesson. That's when the principal interrupted her to introduce me as their maintenance technician, explaining that I had full permission to use the shop equipment for repairs, as arranged with their regular shop teacher. She stood there opening and closing her mouth, unable to speak. When she finally found her voice, she tried to defend herself by pointing out that I looked like a student and was carrying tools into her classroom. The principal explained that yes, that was because I was there to repair chairs, which was my job. She tried one last time to justify herself by saying I should have said something, but the secretary quickly pointed out that I had tried to several times. Mrs. Karen quickly excused herself from the office. The principal apologized to me, but I assured him it wasn't his fault. I went back to the shop classroom to fix those chairs, and Mrs. Karen didn't make eye contact with me once. That incident actually kicked off my career advancement. The principal was impressed with how professionally I handled the situation, and over the years, I took on more responsibilities. I worked my way up through various positions, got my degree in facilities management, and eventually became the facilities director for the entire school district. Sometimes I think about Mrs. Karen and wonder if she ever learned to stop judging people by their appearance. She never supped at our school again after that day. I guess some people just can't handle being wrong. The secretary and I still laugh about it at district meetings. She loves telling new employees about the time the tardy maintenance man got sent to the principal's office. Last Valentine's Day, I decided to try something different with my wife. After 12 years of marriage, we'd fallen into the usual routine of evening dinner reservations, fighting through crowded restaurants and dealing with overpriced set menus. This time I suggested we go for lunch instead. My wife and I had met in culinary school. While I went on to become a pastry chef, she pursued food photography. Our shared love for food made every meal together special, even after all these years. We chose this new fusion restaurant that had opened downtown, famous for their innovative take on comfort food. The lunch was perfect. We ordered several dishes to share, and everything exceeded our expectations. The highlight was this amazing dessert, a deconstructed apple pie with homemade vanilla bean ice cream. Being in the industry myself, I could appreciate the technical skill behind each component. On our drive back, I was in that blissful state you get after a satisfying meal, just content and peaceful. My wife was enthusiastically telling me about an upcoming photography project. She explained her excitement about a client wanting to do a series on street food vendors, focusing on capturing their stories and journeys into the business. She expressed how meaningful she thought this project could be. I was listening, taking in every word while enjoying the gentle afternoon sun through the car window. She suddenly asked if I was actually listening to her. I assured her I was and repeated back how she'd been discussing the street food vendor project, explaining how the client wanted to focus on personal stories rather than just the food, and mentioned its meaningfulness in highlighting street food culture's human aspect. She then told me she preferred when people actively showed they were listening throughout the conversation. I couldn't help but see the perfect opportunity for some playful mischief. We'd always enjoyed teasing each other. It was our love language. I agreed with her completely, and she continued talking about her ideas for the shoot composition and lighting. As she spoke about using natural light and early morning or late afternoon shots for the golden hour effect, I simply responded with, uh-huh. She continued explaining her plans to capture vendors in their element while preparing food, and I replied with another uh-huh. When she mentioned including action shots of them serving customers, I said uh-huh again. After she brought up the client's interest in turning it into a coffee table book, I responded with yet another uh-huh. She warned me not to say uh-huh one more time. I turned to her with the biggest grin on my face and said it anyway. She burst out laughing, and as soon as I pulled into the parking lot of the local quilting store she needed supplies for her latest hobby, she unleashed her tickle attack. Despite my best efforts to defend myself, she knew all my weak spots. I was helplessly laughing as she mercilessly tickled my sides. I begged for mercy and surrendered, and she playfully told me this was what I got for being a smartass. I admitted it was worth it, though. Several people walking by gave us strange looks, two grown adults having a tickle fight in a car. But we didn't care. These moments of silly playfulness kept our relationship fresh and fun. She told me I was lucky she loved me. I agreed and asked if that applied even when I was being deliberately annoying. She confirmed it was especially true when I was being deliberately annoying. The whole incident became one of those small but precious memories we'd occasionally bring up and laugh about. Every now and then, when one of us is telling a story, the other would say, uh-huh, in that same exaggerated way, and we'd both crack up. It's these little inside jokes and moments of shared humor that make a marriage wonderful. Later that evening, while she was working on her quilt and I was preparing dinner, she kept saying, uh-huh, every time I said anything. Touché, my love. Touché. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.